Hi, I'm Glenn Everett, Master of Machines. This episode, we talk to a man who's had a lifelong dream. That dream was to own every type of car that he's ever desired. He started with nothing and has worked hard all of his life to achieve that goal. So how about we talk to the man about his machines? Terry Dowel, a passionate car enthusiast, loves everything on wheels. Terry, thanks so much for having us here to look at your magnificent collection. Where did it all start for you and cars?
Dad bought a T-model Ford when I was about 12 or 13. My elder brother was 3 years older, and we lived on a creek, and around that creek we used to race around in this T-model. Graham wasn't happy with the speed, so he stripped the body off it, and then we became really involved in a lot of mechanical things like tractors and all the things you do on farms. We just grew up with petrol in your veins.
Terry, I've heard that you're a bit of a racer, and this Group N EH here looks like it means business.
We were great fans of Norm Beachy, Calder, Sandown, you name it, and we've always loved the sound of an EH Holden. She's fairly full on. We've done a lot of hill climbs in it. Performs very well. We've won a few trophies in it, but the little minis always give you a hard time, especially on tight hill climbs.
So the 179, is she pretty healthy?
Yeah, 179 with the whole kit and caboodle, 3 Weber carbies.
I've seen these in Group N spec make somewhere around 240 horsepower.
It's in that mark, yeah.
Terry Dowel. Running it around. 6 cylinders, drum brake all around.
The 64.5 MB Mustang, which with 4 speeds makes one big difference.
I do love the Mustang. I do love the 289 engine too. They're just such a beautiful, screaming little engine, aren't they?
Yeah, fantastic. The last big race we had was at Bathurst, where we fortunately won the Australian Hill Climb Championship. So it was pretty exciting.
Terry, is this really what I think it is?
Sure is.
It's Peter Brock's Paddock car.
Mm-hmm. His Paddock bomb.
Gee, the real thing?
The real thing, the one.
Where did you pick it up?
Phil Mundy had it. We're looking at Peter Brock in our museum. We thought because of his history in Australian racing, we need to do him justice. So we thought wherever we can put Peter in here, we will do so.
I just can't believe that such a car would still exist. I would have thought something like that would be long gone.
Yeah, well, apparently, from what Phil said, that it was hanging up in a warehouse in Moorabbin, and it was authenticated to be the real thing.
Thank goodness for that, and thank goodness it didn't end up in the tip somewhere.
Yeah, well, quite often these things do.
This is really where it all started for Peter, didn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't. There's no need for a brake pedal because it doesn't have brakes.
No brakes?
No.
Wow.
Peter inverted the springs at the rear end to get the body down low to get the centre of gravity right for his thrashing around the paddocks. I think he's about 13 or 14, something of that order.
That is absolutely
And
incredible.
the Austin 7 that he started with, took to it with an axe to cut the body off it to end up with a car that looks like this.
I've heard also that the plank of wood was for his brother to sit on.
Yeah, his brother used to sit on that plank of wood to get a free ride. Just puts another meaning on planking, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It was happening long ago.
Yeah. And I believe that's where his talents were originally established, through his ability to handle a vehicle, drifting through corners and gates and learning to drive without brakes does put the pressure on as to develop abilities, which is really what established him as a race driver, I believe.
And a replica of Peter Brock's A30.
Roy Reeves built this, a Queensland race driver. The first replica was built by Peter Brock's brother and son.
And I believe the engine was set back a fair way also.
Yeah, right into almost beside the driver.
The sports sedans back in the day where people would build up homegrown cars out of all sorts of componentry, and you could do it on a budget. And someone like Peter was able to drive a car just like this one here and get recognised by the almighty Harry Firth from HDT, and that's how it all started for him, wasn't it?
Yes, well, Harry noticed him on the track and he knew if he can drive something, mongrel thing like this, he can drive anything, and so that's where the interest took off with Harry Firth. My brother was involved with Peter in the early days. Graham was in fiberglass boat building, and Peter lived in Diamond Creek. Graham lived in Greensboro, and Brocky contacted Graham because he was in fiberglass. He said, Graham, can you do something about putting flares on this Austin A30? I want to put a wider track. It's too narrow. Graham said, yes, I can handle all that for you. So we built up the moulds and did the flares, the bonnet, the doors, the boot lid, all to reduce weight. The front end wasn't satisfactory on the A30, so what was used there was Graham's Triumph Herald front end. Graham's wife Beverly had an EH Holden motor, and I think that was one of the first motors they used in that car. So Graham was heavily involved in Brock's evolution. Peter Brock ended up calling Graham King. So there were two kings, Brocky the king of the mountain and Graham the king of the fiberglass.
And another car that was driven by Peter Brock, but this one was driven at Goodwood Festival, wasn't it, in England?
Yes, 2006 Peter drove this vehicle. Phil Munday principally did the building of the motor car, restoring it from an early model, and Ian Tate helped with the mechanical side of it to get it into full race trim. The car did extremely well. Can they believe the gearing wasn't quite right for the circuit because they ran out of time in evolving the car for that particular track. He still won the St Mary's Trophy for his experience in taking an Australian Aussie legend, iconic car, to the Goodwood racetrack to show the Poms what a real car can do. Now it's done.
So effectively it was an Aussie assault, wasn't it?
Yes.
And we're talking about cars like Jaguars, which were far superior dynamically with suspension and brakes, bigger engines, and this little grey-motored 48 215 went over and give him hell. I've seen the footage. It was a bit damp, and he was right there with him, wringing its neck.
That's right. It was spectacular.
Stay tuned for our next episode to see part 2 of our feature on this incredible collection. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and click the notifications bell because there's a lot more content coming your way.